Now it's time for our speaker this morning, Melvin Tidwell. Melvin was born in Lakeland, Florida. He lived on a small family farm and was a dedicated musician all through his school years, but joined the Navy at age 18. After submarine training in Groton, Connecticut, he was stationed on a submarine in Hawaii. 10 years after serving on several vessels and other training duty stations, he left the Navy in Jacksonville, Florida. That same year, he began working for Lockheed Martin. He traveled the world as an engineer working on Navy ships throughout the US and abroad. He left Lockheed in 1996. He spent the next couple of years traveling across America and worked the summer of 1997 at Yellowstone National Park as a boiler technician. After driving back and forth across America a few times, he then eventually took a job with Gulfstream Aerospace in Savannah, Georgia. He worked there for a couple of years, but missed his all-expense-paid traveling adventures. His boss sought him out and asked him to return in 2000. The travel returned, and there was much rejoicing. In 2003, he accepted a permanent position for Lockheed in Huntsville, Alabama. There he met his husband, John Pruitt. He finished his career and retired from Lockheed in 2017. At that time, he and John moved to their home in Blue Ridge, Georgia. Thanks to the support, love, and encouragement from our congregation to take his stories a step further, he branched out to speak at other venues. Mel now spends his time cooking, gardening, and cleaning their Airbnb, and taking care of John and their Norwegian elk hound, Bo, the ultimate love dog. Today, Mel is talking about the mother that gave me life and the mothers that made me, me.
Thank you, Martin. Happy Mother's Day. Does everyone know what a mother is? Are you sure? The definition of mother used as a noun is a woman in relation to her child. When used as a verb, it's bring up a child with care. Wikipedia says a mother is the female parent of a child. A woman may be considered a mother by virtue of having given birth, by raising a child who may or may not be her biological offspring, or by supplying her ovum for fertilization in the case of gestational surrogacy. Is this true? I guess if we don't speak with modern influences, those might be the limitations. Looking at the etymology of the word, it is, but however, I have modern influences, and I think us as a congregation have modern influences. It's one of the things that binds us together, but I'll come back to that. Every mother that someone read a script for is being celebrated here today for their love, their guidance, and the gifts they shared with the world. But to start today, on this Mother's Day, I want to speak of my mother. I'm sure many of you are probably thinking this is way too emotional to be speaking of your mom on Mother's Day, and it is. I keep telling myself I'm not going to be able to get through it, but then I hear, can't, never could do nothing. And Clara was right. Clara Hallman was born August 10th, 1937 in Gregory, Arkansas, and she shared her sense of wonder with me. We didn't sit down and discuss it. It's a realization I've come to over these past few years. I think had times been different, she may have discovered this about herself as I have. I remember her always reading books, mostly Westerns during her younger years. Many of you know Zane Grey, Louis L'Amour. She didn't read romance novels or gossip magazines, but she did watch her stories. Everybody knows about stories, right? But Mom also gave up books for video games. I was a traveling engineer back in the 1990s and had suffered a long flight from New York to LA next to an unruly child. I went to the mall and bought a brand new Nintendo Game Boy. It was a ploy to have in my pocket for the next flight back, and that flight was back home to Lakeland, Florida for Christmas. That Game Boy never did leave my mother's house. For years, we would find her asleep, Game Boy laying on the floor beside her bed, but that was part of her sense of wonder, her taking the new thing and learning to use it. My mom was from the Depression era and had all the old traditional wifey skills, sewing, preserving, crocheting, cooking. Well, cooking not so much in the beginning. She told me her story of the first time she went with my daddy to Alabama to meet the family. And the women of the family, my great aunties, told her she had to cut up the chicken for frying. Could any of you cut up a chicken at 17? Can any of you cut up a chicken now? How about one you just said hello to out in the yard? I think they wanted to whip her when they saw what she did to that chicken. I love her very much, and I miss her every day. I'm remembering her in my way, trying to continue many family traditions that are falling away. Growing, harvesting, freezing. This is how I carry her in my heart as I stand at my stove using the cast iron from her mother before us, or when I'm washing the greens at the sink and getting ready to smell them in the pot all day long. Our mother loved us deeply, but she had some old-fashioned ways to her. She would get tired of my brothers fighting all the time, and she would drag them physically, if she had to, out in the dirt and draw a circle and make them fight it out. I'll give her credit, it worked though. But Clara was also that dragnet mom. Did any of you have that? When you were in trouble, she would walk in like, Mom, 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 Mom. My mother and me, we did have some difficult times. This story, this recording, will be around forever as my legacy to her, and I thank you all for letting me do that. But this is how I remember her. My mother was a smart woman. Her formal education was limited, but her learning was not. From learning how to become a woman and a wife all the way to learning about being a great-great-grandmother and all points between. She learned and adapted the best she could through the Great Depression all the way into the 21st century. Think about it. She was born before television was widespread, before the microwave oven, before the vacuum cleaner was common, before disposable diapers and disposable income. There were no video games to entertain her children. She had to raise us, and she did a great job. However, as much as she learned, the only thing Mom ever knew was family. Everything revolved around it from beginning to end. Every single activity in her life included us or was for us. All those days of picking vegetables and then canning them and freezing them to feed us all winter, it didn't matter if it was hard work. It didn't matter if she was tired. She had to feed us. When I was a child, every weekend was for family baseball games during the day. Then the adults played cards, and us kids were outside playing hide and seek until the wee hours. When I was a teenager, she planned camping trips every weekend. She loved sitting by the fire and feeding the raccoons, and she loved pointing out the different wildlife to us and instilling in us a love of nature and to always respect it. She loved being with family and friends and telling stories of their lives and sharing a meal. I didn't know it at the time, but all of this was soaking into my being and making me who I am today. And I now try to recreate this life for myself. Clara wasn't a fancy woman. She didn't own lavish clothes, and outside the lipstick she wore when she was younger, I don't remember her wearing makeup more than a handful of times. what she was is welcoming. My husband, John, wrote his tribute to her when she passed, and he said, "I got a new mom who was the matriarch of a welcoming and loving family, who she taught to respect and care for anyone who crossed her threshold." She was not wealthy by any means, so all she had to give were kind words, a loving smile, a warm hug, and assurances that I was family too, but that was worth all the treasures on this earth. But that was exactly it. She passed along a great legacy in our family. We all know how to love deeply. We all know we come from humble beginnings, and we all know life is hard work. But we also know that we're finer than frog hair, and if we ain't, we'll never notice it on a galloping horse, and that's the kind we ride. She said that all the time. When the little ones came to visit, she would always say, "Come sit in Gigi's pocket." That's what they called her. They would climb up in her chair next to her, and she would dote over them and give them a cracker or maybe a brownie. Her grandchildren, down to the great-greats, knew the comfort of her pocket that wrapped you up in her soul. It was more than a hug. It was more than love. It was acceptance for whom they were, for everything they ever became. You see, she had come to a calmness in her elder years. It was as if the serenity prayer had woven into her DNA and gave her a peacefulness inside. That Gigi, that wonderful granny to anyone who needed her to be. But you know what? She couldn't provide all the mothering I needed. It was mothering I didn't know I needed or even what it was. I had just finished basic training in electronics school in Orlando, so I really hadn't left home yet. I was 19 years old, and I found myself in Groton, Connecticut. I was waiting for my submarine schooling to begin and was standing mid-watch at the barracks. And part of our duty was to go around and make wake-up calls. This was before any sort of portable alarm clocks or electronic gizmos. Men signed a book the night before with their name, their room number, and the time they wanted me to knock on their door. First up, it was Petty Officer Barry Sullivan at 5:30. Knock, knock. The door opens, and there's Blanche. The mascara running from the night before and smudged powder on his lips, and he mumbled something that I later learned to be fake French. He said, "Tenez de la main." I was mortified and wanted to run away, but I had to get him to sign that book. Up next, one floor up, was Petty Officer Mark Thame. I opened the door, and there was Myrna. Smudged mascara and lipstick up his cheek. And you know what he said? "Tenez de la main." Now I ran. I didn't wait for him to sign the book. Remember, we were still in the throes of the lavender scare, and being gay was out. But I had just come face to face with my first queens. One that would become my gay mother, Barry Sullivan, a.k.a. Blanche. You see, they had to wake up early to wash away the Blanche and Myrna before going back to Barry and Mark. It's one of those life-defining moments that you don't come to realize until so much later. Oh, what a character Barry was. He was lively and handsome. He was strong mentally, but pretty feminine in his mannerisms. We didn't become friends until I finally entered training, and the very first day, they told us where the gay bar was and that it was off limits and to never go there. It was called the Salty Dog, and it was over in New London across the Thames River Bridge, and being the naive thing that I was, I would never venture over there, ever. But I found this small, out-of-the-way place It was named Frank's Place, and I met Frank, the owner, and so many other sailors just like me. It was the kind of place you go and you meet and you play softball on Saturdays, and then you go back and you have some beers. And after hearing so many stories of the salty dog, I finally accepted an invitation. There was no turning back now. But I walk in and there's all of these sailors just like me, dancing and partying and having a blast. My life would never be the same. But that's where I really met Blanche. We became roommates for a while, and we also had a man named Dewey Stuvey, who I'm social media friends with still today. But by living among and observing how they moved through this existence of hiding in plain sight was exactly what I needed. We were all as normal as we could be during duty hours. Then we came home to be ourselves. There we were, a group of like-minded men, traveling through this world where we weren't truly wanted, but all of us growing into the person we had to be. My fondest memory of Blanche is when my classmates would come over and get him stoned. He would put on Sheena Easton's morning train, grab a feather boa, ascend into the open loft above the living room and perform, dancing back and forth by the railing to an ending sliding down our spiral staircase banister. I unfortunately didn't have enough life knowledge to understand what was happening, but I was being reborn. Away from all I had known and mostly unencumbered from the watchful eyes of those I had grown up with, the people I had heard such hate and disdain from while in school or work. Through all of this was Blanche, introducing the new skin to everyone. It's with this group of men that I first ventured into New York City and Greenwich Village, and it was a different world, and I was becoming anew. Then came Martha Smith, my sweet Martha, my midlife mother. We met when I moved in next door to her at Mission Beach in San Diego. I had moved there to finally settle down with a partner, and his name was Newton. He was a damn disaster. I should have listened to my best friend Ray. He tried to warn me. But thank goodness Martha was there to save me. When we met, I don't think she was aware of the kind of life she could have. You see, Martha had ran. She ran away from her married life in San Francisco. She had tried to disappear from an abusive husband. She shared with me the story of her wind chime. She loved that chime, and every day her husband would come home and hit it and flip it up onto the roof. She put up with all of it for years, him flipping that wind chime up on the roof, and she would have to get the ladder to take it back down. Somehow she had survived a child committing suicide, another on the streets as a drug-addicted soul, and the third moving to Oklahoma and giving her life to Jesus. Then one day that was her line in the sand. She would climb that ladder one last time. She had secretly built her own wealth and just left. I, come to find out, had moved in with an abusive man. Martha and I loved each other through a difficult time. I listened to her heartache. She gave me encouragement and became my ear of comfort. I taught her how to drink and party. I kept in touch with her through the years, and every single time she would tell me that our time together was the best of her life. In retrospect, she provided everything I needed during a pretty turbulent time, and I love her still. So I have experienced mothering from so many, and heck, my 98-year-old neighbor Betty thinks I'm a child and need mothering still. So every year on Mother's Day, I find myself saying to heck with the etymology of the word, and my mind always wanders to all of my mothers. Blanche, Martha, Clara, Daphne. These women are how I see mothers. The vintage and modern genre of women playing vital roles in all of our lives. I think they should be thanked as well. I wouldn't be here without all of them. So as you depart the sanctuary today, and maybe you say mom, nana, granny, mother, or mother, I will refer back to the original definition. Please bring up a child with care. Shalom, namaste, assalamu alaikum, amen.